For our Be the Change segment this month, we are featuring Sandy Hook Promise, an organization that is dedicated to preventing gun violence in our nation's schools. I've invited the co-founder and managing director, Nicole Hockley, to tell us more about the organization. We're also going to discuss what we can do as parents, neighbors, and community leaders to prevent gun violence where we live. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So, Nicole, I'm well aware of your story and all the work that you're doing to prevent gun violence through Sandy Hook Promise. Would you mind sharing a little bit about why the topic of gun violence prevention is so important to you?
Sure. The topic of gun violence prevention is very personal to me. Almost 7 years ago, on December 14th, 2012, I sent two of my sons, off to school, and only one came home. My youngest son, Dylan, was shot and killed in his first grade classroom at Sandy Hook Elementary School. And for me, I'm on a personal mission to ensure that no parent ever has to experience the loss of their child in this way, but also to teach others about how preventable gun violence is and how to take those steps to ensure that we can one day be in a nation where no student ever experiences the devastating effects of a school shooting.
I applaud you and thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I have young children myself, and I'm extremely inspired by the work you're doing to make a difference in our nation and protect our children, so thank you. I do want to ask you a little bit about Sandy Hook Promise and what you guys are specifically doing to prevent gun violence in schools. Obviously, we hear a lot in the news, right, about gun violence or the ways that we can make this right. What is Sandy Hook Promise doing to prevent gun violence?
We have a very specific set of programs that are evidence-based and proven to reduce gun violence by saving people and impacting lives in that way. There's a lot of different ways that people attack the issue of gun violence prevention, and most of it is done through a policy or a legislative perspective in terms of passing sensible gun safety laws. We're all for that and very supportive. However, what we felt was missing and what's so needed are community-based solutions that pair with those policies. And how can we teach kids, especially in middle school and high school, how to recognize at-risk signs of violence or self-harm in their peers and in themselves, and then take action to intervene. So we're more about upstream violence prevention. And within that broad spectrum of violence, we are also helping to avert self-harm, suicide by firearm, homicide by firearm, and mass shootings.
Can we talk specifically about some of the programs that you are working on in schools that are providing that information?
Sure. We have an umbrella program called Know the Signs, and then within that we have programs such as Start with Hello, where we teach kids how to recognize the signs of someone who is chronically socially isolated and to understand how that feels and how being pushed out or withdrawn can feel and how to create connections, because we know that social isolation is really one of those upstream factors that if you intervene on it and make connections earlier on, people aren't left to their own devices, aren't feeling like they need to retaliate against something, aren't feeling like they're being bullied. So connections are really important. Another program that we promote very heavily is Say Something, and that's where we teach teens and the adults around them, how do you recognize the signs of at-risk behaviors? So someone who is behaviorally showing that they are thinking about harm to themselves or hurting someone else, or how to recognize an overt threat that's being made and then take action. And particularly on social media, because that's where a lot of these threats and these behavioral issues are surfacing. So how can we teach kids to, take it really seriously when you see this on social media or you hear about it on the bus or in the classroom, and take action by telling a trusted adult or using an anonymous reporting system, and why that's so important to not just think, oh, I'm snitching, I'm going to get someone in trouble. No, you're going to get someone help. And those are the two key programs that we teach kids around the country.
And save lives as well, right?
Absolutely.
So a big part of it sounds like awareness, know the signs, and then action, say something. So let's talk about some of those signs, because there's a lot of parents listening with kids that are in school. What are some of the signs that we should be looking for?
There's a lot of signs to look for, and it's not, sometimes, a threat can be incredibly overt. Like if someone says, don't come to school tomorrow, I'm bringing a gun and I'm going to shoot up the school, that's something, take immediate action by calling 911, local law enforcement, or telling someone, an adult, who can then do that for you. But there's a ton of other signs in terms of this spectrum of violence and self-harm. And for those that I don't cover, you can always go to our website, sandyhookpromise.org, and download the brochure, which has a lot of the signs in them. And this is around how do you piece things together. So someone who is chronically depressed, or ideating on suicide, or giving away possessions, or obsessed with previous shootings, or obsessed with firearms and collecting firearms, or finding ways to access firearms. It's also about people who have trouble managing their emotions. A lot of gun violence and self-harm stems from an inability to properly manage anger and resolve conflicts. These are simple skills that so many people have, but other kids struggle with it sometimes. And when they can't figure out, I'm angry at that person and I want to retaliate, or I can't figure out how to fix this problem, so I'm going to do it through violence or self-harm. Those are the sort of signs that we teach people to look for. Who's withdrawing? Who's pushing others away? Who is being overly aggressive to something that seems very minor to someone else? Massive behavioral changes, or dress changes, or interest changes. Someone who could be a really good student is suddenly failing out. These show major shifts in a person that show that something's going on in their lives that means that they need help. And that's the kind of thing that we teach in schools.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the overt action of like somebody posting something on social, like I'm going to go do something tomorrow at school, that's pretty obvious. But these other signs maybe have a little bit of gray area. So if you're a student or a teacher or a parent and you're seeing some of these things, you don't necessarily want to call 911 when you see that. Like, where do you go? Where do you go first with that? Do you go to the school? What do you do?
It really depends on the student and who they're comfortable talking to. In the case of emergency, we always train everyone, call 911. That's got to be your first port of call if it's an emergency. If it's something that you're noticing that someone is, maybe they're cutting, or maybe they've been abusing substances, or they're getting, attacked by their boyfriend or girlfriend and they're suffering from dating violence, all the way up to someone who is contemplating harm to others. The first thing, if it's not an emergency, find a trusted adult. We're not asking students to diagnose other students. Take it to an adult who then has more expertise in getting that help. And a trusted adult can be anyone. It can be someone in the school. It could be your parent. It could be your coach. It could be your faith leader, or your youth club leader, or just someone else who is adult enough to know, all right, I've now been given this information. I'm going to take this to the school administration, for example, or to law enforcement if needed, if it seems like a significant risk. And then they can take the actions that's needed. And when we have an anonymous reporting system paired with it, then that takes the responsibility away from students and parents altogether, because they can just call the line, use the app, or go to the website, report a tip of this is what I'm seeing or hearing, show any images or upload anything that they're seeing from social media, and know that each tip is going to be triaged and then dealt with appropriately by a school team or by local law enforcement, depending on whether someone's life is in imminent danger or not.
Yeah, I remember watching, I think it was one of your TED Talks, or maybe both of your TED Talks. You talk specifically about the majority of the time, and I'm going to mess up the statistic, the majority of the time, a lot of this is, a lot of the times they're giving signals, or they're physically telling you something's going to happen, whether it's overt or, very specific. So, I mean, I guess a lot of the time we just have to act, right?
Absolutely. The Secret Service call this leakage, when someone is showing and exhibiting behavioral changes or giving these more threats that aren't necessarily completely overt. Signs and signals are what we teach kids what to look for and how to recognize them, because they're not always easy to spot, but the way they can accumulate means something's going on. And that's really what this training is all about, this leakage, and the fact that we know that when we look at mass shootings and we look at suicide and we look at a vast majority of gun violence, it's preventable because of the leakage. These signs and signals that people give off, they're opportunities for intervention. And when you know what to look for, you can create the intervention. And we know from research that 4 out of 5 school shooters tell at least one person what they're intending to do. They're giving off these signs and signals. In the same case with those who die by suicide, 7 out of 10 of them also give off warning signs and signals. Again, these are opportunities for intervention. They're opportunities to take action and get someone help before they take that next step towards tragedy.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about, so there's a parent listening, there's somebody who's a teacher, there's somebody who's just involved in their community, and they say, I don't want this, tragedy in my community, and they want the schools to be prepared. How does your organization support the school then? Talk to us about this training and how that works.
So the training is available on multiple levels. In some states, we have promise presenters, trainers who will actually go out and physically go into the school and deliver this in an assembly period or in a classroom environment. We also have the ability to train other trainers within a school community or district or even a state. And then we also have digital self-lead. So if you want to download the Say Something program, if you're an educator and you say, I want to take this to my classroom, you can actually go to our website, download the program, download the educator guide and all the activities and objectives of learning and activities to do, and do it yourself, and then report back to us how this was experienced by your classroom and what you're seeing, so that we can continue to refine the programs. Later this fall, we're also launching video training. So for some teachers, it's just going to be an easier solution to plug and play. Take the video training of our trainers presenting to your classroom and just plug it in and show it during a classroom, or send it home as a homework assignment if needed. These are different ways. We really want to make sure that we're reaching kids in schools in whatever way they need. So we really prefer to train districts all together, because if you have more power if school to school you're all talking with the same voice and taking the same actions, versus one school having one hotline number and another school having another program. The power with youth comes when you're all working with one voice and one shared action and one training. So we really prefer training at a district level. And then we sustain everything through clubs. We've really learned from the schools that to keep these programs alive, so that starting with hello or saying something just becomes the normal thing of what you do every day, you need to let the students own it. You need to let them lead it and empower them through the use of clubs, which we help to sustain the programs. That each month there's another message around, all right, we've just practiced an active shooter drill. Let's reinforce this with a say something exercise, because as students, we would much rather be preventing violence from happening rather than practicing for when it does. So it's perfect for any parent who wants to bring this to their school or their youth organization or their community center. Self-lead and download the material, or contact us and we'd love to bring it to your district and train the students directly.
And that training, I know budgets are tight in a lot of school districts. How does that work? Is there a cost associated with your training?
There is no cost with the training. We don't charge schools for our services at all. And at a district or state level, there's also federal grants available for training as well in violence prevention programs such as ours and anonymous reporting systems such as ours. But if a district signs up with us, we're not going to charge anything for our services, and to help sustain the clubs as well, to really keep it alive so you can see the impact and the long-term change that we need.
That's incredible. Thank you, Nicole, for that. And I wanted just to let you know a little bit, this segment, this conversation we're having, I like to call it Be the Change, because this allows people, this show's about, building wealth and then giving back, right? So this specific segment is about being the change you want to see in the world. And if you want to see the change in your community, obviously working with organizations like yourself are a great way to do it. So let's talk about what happens with a money that is donated to your organization. If somebody wants to help and support this organization, how does that work?
Well, and donations are absolutely needed so that we can do the work, because since we don't charge schools for our costs, but obviously there are costs to delivering the program, and we are 100% donor funded. The money is used for the program. So roughly it costs on average, depending on the program, it costs on average $1 for us to train a child. So if you think about how big your district is and how many kids are there, you can get a rough estimate of how much money is needed for us to go in each year and train those kids. 75 cents of every dollar that's donated to us goes straight into those programs. We're not here to make money. We are here to have an impact and to save lives, period. So the donations, we keep our overheads incredibly low so that the money from our donors is is used in the way it's intended, which is to impact lives.
Excellent. Well, Nicole, if you could look out 5 years from now, as you've been working on this organization for over 5 years now, how would you describe success for what you're doing with Sandy Hook Promise?
Well, I mean, I kind of feel my job is to put us out of business, by training every single school in the country and ending this epidemic of gun violence and school shootings. I don't know if I don't think that can be achieved within the next 5 years, but I think when I look back at what we've achieved in the last few years, we're already in about 14,000 schools, have trained about 7.5 million kids so far, have generated almost 30,000 life-saving tips into our anonymous reporting system, and intervened on a lot of school shooting plans and suicide threats and other forms of violence. So if I look 5 years out, I'd say we'll easily be at we should be at more than 20 million kids trained by that time. And some of those 20 million are going to be kids that will have been trained more than once, that they're really getting the impact going forward. We'll be in a lot more schools across the country, especially where there is violent crime and death by firearm. And we'll be building up these next 5 years of kids, because some of the kids that we've been training are now going into high school and graduating out. So within the next 5 years, a lot of those kids will now be in college or beyond, and we'll be training the next generation as well. So it's just going to be more lives saved, more impact, and more education on how to recognize the signs and help someone before they ever reach the point of picking up a weapon to hurt themselves.
That's incredible results. You said 30,000 anonymous tips or tips that have come in, and
just in the last year.
In the last year. Wow. And physically preventing this from happening. So that's what happens if we have the awareness and we know how to take action. Nicole, this is an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for your time today. Where can people learn more about Sandy Hook Promise and then consider donating and supporting your organization?
Well, thank you. And if anyone who wants to learn more, just go to sandyhookpromise.org. You can sign up, leave us your email so that you're getting regular updates from us. There's a donate button right there on the website as well. And all of the information is there, as well as tools to help you bring it to your school or district.
Everybody, I'm a proud supporter of this organization. That's why I wanted to talk with Nicole today. It's an extreme honor to speak to her, a parent who is out there, not just thinking about, hey, man, look at all those horrible things that are out there that are happening. She's on the front lines for all of us trying to protect our children. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you.